start. All right, hello and welcome to this new video where we're gonna go through specific stage one, talk a bit about each team, and then go through my week one pick'ems. So yeah, let's start. We're gonna do similarly to Americas, where we just go alpha group into omega group, and we go from bottom seed to top seed. So why don't we just start? First team we have is Boom. And Boom is honestly a bit of an underdog to get to playoffs to me. I do know they're a bottom seed, but I feel like there's no real like bottom seed in this group. Like I would say there's probably currently a pretty clear top 3 and bottom 3, but the only reason for those is probably more last season than this season. So honestly, while I still think the top 2 are pretty clear, um I do think that the only team that I'm actually confident in making playoffs at all is the RX. Um, and honestly, Boom, I mean, to me, Burst Rex, he's one of the most underrated players in the game right now, to be completely honest. I think he's a top 3 Senti in Apex, and the only one I can really agree is better than him is probably Meteor. He's just absolutely ridiculous. I actually picked him in this new VCL thing that this new VCT Fantasy League that um, Team V is doing. He was a steal, bro. But yeah, it's gonna be fun to watch them. But yeah, they have a tough group. I mean, I would say arguably there are all 5 teams have a chance to get one of the 3 playoff spots that isn't the RX's. To be completely honest, like this team is genuinely that good. I mean, famous Dolls 9, Shiro all looked solid. And sure, they lost to both their games, but like keep in mind, both their games was to Nongshim and T1. T1 won Bangkok. Sure, it wasn't the exact same T1, but still, it was T1, and Nongshim was one of the best teams. And we'll talk about them a bit later. But yeah, they're also a really good team, and both of them were 2-1s. Like they won a map against both of them. Sure, both of them were buying, but the other maps were somewhat competitive. Sure, that Pearl against Nongshim was a bit of a stinker, but otherwise it's 9-13, 11-13, and 7-13. So they're looking good, you know? Like against T1, they had a chance to win this game. Like if they lost their own map pick in Pearl, 11-13, but they were actually up 8-5 and 10-7. But yeah, then T1 kind of woke up a bit. But if they would have won that map, I mean, Bind started off 9-1. Like, Boom could have 2-0'd T1. Like, imagine if that would have happened. Like, this Boom team is not to play with. But either way, moving on, we have Global Esports, which have some roster moves. Darion's obviously out, mostly because obviously Patrick Hu now has his visa done. So Global will have their main roster coming into stage one. It's going to be interesting to see. Yudotan is obviously going to go into Senti now. And then I think it was Kelly S that played like sort of a flex initiator Senti role. He's probably going to continue being flex, but probably play less Senti now, if I were to guess. Maybe we'll even see some double duelists with Patrick Hu and Yudotan. But I'm actually pretty excited for Patrick Hu as well. I mean, just look at those stats from VCL 2024. This team is basically just like 5 tier 2 maniacs from last year. Like this team could be better than some people expect. Honestly, I could see this team finishing like 3rd, 2nd in their group. Like genuinely, I could see that happening. Like Crystal is insane, Poppy is insane, Kelly Essence like just the 3 Filipino players and Patrick Hu, Poppy, and Kelly S were literally, if I'm pretty sure if you look at VCT Philippines, and look at from 2024 and look at the top players there, I'm pretty sure. Wait, let me check. Yeah, it's Poppy, Patrick Hu, and Kelly S. It's literally the top 3. They just looked at VCL Philippines split too and was like, oh, Poppy Kelly is Patrick Koo. Here you go. Guys want a roster spot in tier one? Here you go. Then they picked up the IGL from China's Ascension winning team that literally plowed through everybody like it was nothing and won everything. And he's fucking insane. And then they pick up Yudoton, who was Rare Adam, the other team in China Ascension that lost. That was that team that had Freeing on it as well. The guy from DRX, right? It was Freeing and Yudotan that literally hard carried this Rare Adam team to the grand finals. Then they got absolutely plowed by Shilai. Like, this is such a good team. Like, just looking at the players in tier 2, you have the 3 top players in VCL Philippines 2024 Split 2. And then you have 2 players who both went to the China Ascension Grand Finals. And practically, yeah, this team actually has so much potential, man. Like, this team is actually, like, could be so good. Could be so good if they look good. And I think their coaching staff is also pretty decent. I mean, they got elevated on there. They got Juvenile, who, what? We don't really want to talk about Juvenile right now because everything that's happening, but he coached Oxygen for a while. He even was an assistant coach for Leviathan throughout 2024 for a bit. I mean, they have a good coaching staff, except for that thing that happened now with Juvenile. But yeah, moving on from that, we have PRX, which this is probably the team that I'm. Obviously, I'm excited to watch PRX always, but this is probably the least excited I've ever been to watch PRX. I mean, Patman is an interesting ad and can potentially definitely come on to the main roster if it keeps on looking bad. And honestly, like, if they look like they look at kickoff or just slightly better, like, even if they're just slightly better, I think this team is going to struggle and could honestly miss playoffs. Like, this is what I mean, right? These top teams, like, they could miss playoffs, like, genuinely. And going on to, this is one of the other reasons why, like, we have Global Boom that we've been talking about that both I feel like could make playoffs, and then we have DFM, which, although to me, I do think May has been needing to hard care a bit too much. Like, sure, these stats from May is obviously great, but you'd want some other players to step up. But honestly, if like Jen could get to that sort of level which we know he can be, obviously we haven't seen it in like tier 1 and such, but if he could just get to like a pretty solid level, because like he's been, obviously he's kind of similar to Karen where he came in from the, like, he was like a ranked player, and then Art obviously is a bit of a but yeah, I mean, if this team just steps up a bit, this team could genuinely be a bit of an underdog. But obviously, I feel like the team needs to play better and not just rely on May as much as they are doing right now, which is like my one concern with this team. So yeah, and then we have Genji, which, looking right now, it's looking like they're probably gonna play Karen, Munchkin, Texture. Obviously, that core is always gonna, like, the thing with Genji is like that core will almost guarantee you a playoff spot as is, which is why I'm not very concerned with Genji. But it's gonna be interesting though, because Foxy9 is still on the roster. Yeoman is obviously out. Foxy9 is still on the roster. Then they have Ash and Suggest, which Ash was Ash was on Genji's like academy roster and looked great, as you can see on his stats there, and is like a crack duelist. But Suggest is also an old duelist, but what's weird with Suggest is he hasn't played since 2023, and it's like, okay, what are this team gonna do? They have 3 duelist players now. I'm gonna assume that either Ash or Suggest is probably gonna go in Santi, maybe Ash. Or maybe Texture goes back to Senti. I mean, he looked good on it. And then Suggest maybe Flex? I don't know. I feel like it would be weird though if Texture went on to Senti though. But yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. But I still think Genji are gonna be good, no matter what, because of this 3 they have. But yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a bit odd right now. And I'm a bit confused what's going on. So yeah. Moving on to DRX. Obviously, they've not made any changes. They went to Bangkok. They're easily the team I'm the most confident in will make playoffs. Might even win the whole thing. To be completely honest, like if the RX doesn't make Toronto, I'm honestly disappointed. And they were the best team in kickoff, and I don't see them not being the best team in their group unless Genji really improves with their new additions. But yeah, DRX looking really good as always. Moving on, we have Zeta Division, where this is probably the most swift one, as they are just so boring, bro. Like, there's nothing to write home about with this team. Like, they're not even, like, funnily bad like a 2G. They're just kind of... Like, it just feels like their players are just not really better than everybody else. Like, they're not scared like 2G. They're not really terrible in terms of strategy, but they don't really have any good strats either. They're just kind of mid in everything. And because of how much APAC team has improved, that's just not good enough anymore. And yeah, they're just straight up the worst team. Obviously, now we're in the mega group. Moving on to Team Secret. This is one of those teams where I'm probably a bit higher on them than a lot of teams are. Arguably, there's right now, though, probably the second worst team in the region. Although my power rating doesn't say that, it's mostly just because I trust this core. I think Envy, Jesse Vash, and Jeremy is a good core. I think Waldorian 2GE has been a bit too inconsistent. But obviously, we've seen, especially from 2GE, that like he can perform really well. And if they can put it together better, I could see this team definitely making playoffs. The problem though is like this group is so strong compared to like these two my god. But yeah, except there we go. Except for Team Secret and Zeta, this group is just so strong. So it's gonna be difficult. But yeah, next team is RRQ, and there are some rumors around them changing their IGL from Estrella to Crazy Guy, which honestly seems like a bit of a weird change to me. Although I like Crazy Guy, it's just kind of like first off, his role kind of clashes with Kushi, and then also like they're both like fragging IG somewhat decently good fragging IGLs. So it seems more like a side grade than anything, unless they really like Crazy Guy's IGLing, which in that case maybe sure. And they just didn't like Estrella's IGLing. I don't know. But yeah, obviously this team was really good, and somehow they finished seventh, eighth. That makes them look worse than they are. They're really good. I mean, if you look at the games they played, they literally played DFM won, lost to Genji, won to Team Secret, and lost to Nongshim. So they basically just lost to two Korean teams, in which they kept it close in both those games. So this team is still really good. And obviously Kushi and Kemkin are just insane. Moving on to Nongshim, another Korean team, one of the ones that they lost to, and actually I have them on the exact same power rating. You're gonna see his little talent. All three of them have the exact same power rating. I actually don't know which one of these three teams that I like more. Like all of them are so good. And this team, the only real thing I'm looking for with this team is just for Danby to branch out a bit. I think this team could genuinely be one of the best teams in the world if just they got a bit more flexible with their comps, and currently they're just kind of using Danby as a meat shield, playing that Neon. And sure, he's getting ACS and ADR, but yeah, you see his other stats, it's just like yikes. But yeah, this team is so high potential, man, so high potential. Then moving on to Talon, I actually really like the changes they've made. Going full tie, obviously, picking up Kilo and Die instead of Governor and Ban. Kilo and Die, basically, they just picked up the two best tie players from VCL SCA Split 1 this year. And then they obviously have Premier Jet Boys and Cruz. The only real issue I have, which I'm a bit concerned about, which we saw a bit in the kickoff as well, is just how is Prim's role gonna look, man? I'm a big like, what is he gonna play? Like he played a bit of Deadlock, a bit of Clove, a bit of Pecha, a bit like he just. I'm just confused what his role is gonna be. Like Killua is gonna be some sort of flex player probably, and Dai is gonna be a smokes player for them, and then obviously they have Cruz, who's playing the initiator role as well. Kilo is going to be like an initiator flex, as I said, and then Jit Boys is another controller. So they actually, the Thigh is kind of like maybe Jet Boys or Thigh is going to go on Santi, and we have Primi finally like full time duelist, hopefully. If that's the case, then I'm pretty excited for this team. This team is going to be really good. If Thigh and Killua can be good, the only real concern then would probably be Cruz fragging, but overall, this team has so much potential if that's the case. Moving on to T1, obviously the team that won Bangkok, arguably best team in the world right now. I feel like you can't really argue against it more than that. Maybe G, like I feel like the argument of they won Bangkok, which was the most recent event, so they're the best team in the world, is so hard to argue against. But I would say like on pure quality of their gameplay, I feel like G2 still might be better. But I would say they're still the best team in the world. And honestly, although they struggled a bit in kickoff, obviously they played so much Valorant. Like, not only did they go on play probably the most Valorant on Babcock, they probably played the most Valorant on kickoff. Like 22 maps, over 480 rounds of Valorant. Like, that's ridiculous. In just a short tournament as well. Obviously, I feel like both Meteor and Sylvan, like Meteor had a rough kickoff, but he looked so much better. Buzz looks good as always. Stacks had a really good tournament. Sylvan looked a lot more comfortable as well, which I think is huge. If this team can continue looking like they did in Bangkok, there's no way this team isn't going to. There's no way this team isn't going to Toronto if this team looks as good as they did in Bangkok. I just don't see it at all, to be completely honest. All right, that was all the teams. So let's move on with the pick'ems. So let's start with DFM versus Global, where you actually see on my ratings here, DFM is actually higher, but I'm gonna pick Global here. I think with Patrick Hu coming in and everything, I think Global could look really good coming into this, and I think they could defeat May. I think they're a bit revenge hungry, especially after that DFM game, as I've heard from. Um, there was an interview I think with Elevated and TMV where Elevated was like, "We were really disappointed with our game against DFM." So I think they're gonna come out guns blazing here, and I think they're gonna win. Moving on to T1 versus Zeta Division, and I don't think I need to talk about this much. It's gonna be T1, and I think it's gonna be a pretty swift 2-0. DRX, PaperX. I'm gonna pick DRX here. Basically, my argument for this is just kind of I just see DRX coming back hungry after going out in Bangkok so early. And although PaperX might be looking better, I just don't see them beating this DRX team, at least not at this current moment and form. Moving on, we have Talon versus Team Secret, and I'm gonna pick Team Secret. Sadly, I would like to pick Team Secret or Talon. Sorry, I would like to pick Team Secret as I do have faith in them, but at the same time, I also want this Talon team to look really good. And I think if you just look at kickoff form and everything, Talon is just the obvious choice here, and I don't think I can pick against that. Moving on to Genji Boom, I'm gonna pick Genji, but mostly that's just because I think Genji are just too good for Boom to beat. But I think Boom could have this game be a lot closer than people think. They could probably win a map, probably take a map off of Genji. Obviously, it could be a Swift 2-0, who knows? But I think Boom could definitely get a map off of Genji easily. Moving on to Nongshim versus RRQ, probably the game of the week. If we're saying so, this is going to be such a banger. I'm going to pick Nongshim though. I like both these teams, but I just think that Nongshim has the higher ceiling. So with the time they've had in the break now, I just see, especially if they're changing Estrella to Crazy Guy, I just see Nongshim having more thought out plans and being the more put together team, as obviously they have the same IGL and have had the same team for a very long time. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one.